enjoyed my son's first birthday party.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today's show is also brought to you by hotels.com, UnTuckit and Grip 6 belts. Today we're going to be looking at the Detroit Pistons, their season review at the 2018-19 season, and what potentially we can expect for this upcoming offseason and for seasons to come as well. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Let's start by looking at how this team played during the season. They were 41-41. The Pistons, 8th in the NBA Eastern Conference, got into the playoffs, of course, only to be swept out by the Milwaukee Bucks 4-0 in the first round of those playoffs. 28th in pace, obviously really slow tempo under new coach Dwayne Casey. 11th in defense, something that Casey's always been renowned for. And 21st in offense. I thought Casey was okay this season. Still has some things that I think are questionable in terms of his rotational decision making. He still has some playoff shortcomings as well as a coach, but overall a pretty solid season for the Pistons. But when you look at them, where do they go from here? How do they get any better than what they are, than what they currently are? That's going to require a lot of internal growth. In terms of things they did well, 6th in the NBA in three-point attempt rate, that's a positive. 4th in offensive rebounding, 5th in defensive rebounding percentage. So some really strong efforts on the glass. Most of that comes due to Andre Drummond. If he is out, then it's obviously nowhere near as good as that. But their shooting was a problem coming into the season. It was clearly a problem in the year. 26th in effective field goal percentage, shooting under 51 effective field goal percentage for the season. That's a number that will have to improve for this team to actually begin to get better. I referenced it already, but have a look at their upcoming offseason. They have pick number 15 in the draft, not an ideal pick, of course. We know that Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo were both picked at number 15, but the odds of getting a player like that at that pick are infinitesimally low. They also have their own second-round pick as well, pick number 45. They were pretty aggressive last season in trading away future seconds to get a couple of second-round picks. It didn't include this one, but it did include their next 4 second-round picks. They don't have a second-round pick of their own for each of the next 4 seasons after this one. Now, in terms of what they can do in free agency, the answer is pretty much nothing. They have $110 million in guaranteed salaries at the moment, which is over the cap already, so they don't have any cap space to work with. They have a few guys on the books in terms of unrestricted free agents. Ish Smith, Wayne Ellington, the Duke, Jose Calderon, Zaza Pachulia. There's a team option on the little dog Glenn Robinson, and there's a non-guarantee on Sviatoslav Mikhailuk, who came across from the Lakers in that Reggie Bullock deal. And even if they, renounce all those cap holds and waive the and decline the team option and waive the non-guarantees, they still come out at $110 million in guaranteed salary. So that is, I guess, a level of concern, is that if they look to, they could theoretically get worse, because if someone like Ish Smith decides to go somewhere else, they don't have the cap space to really improve that position. Maybe they get a backup point guard at pick number 15, but you're very unlikely to be relying upon someone at that spot to be giving you those good point guard minutes. So they are in a bit of strife. Look, a trade could be a possibility. There's Reggie Jackson, who's got an $18 million expiring contract. You continually hear whispers about Andre Drummond potentially being shipped off, that they look to get out of his $56 million that he is owed over the next 2 seasons. But outside of that, it's really hard to see where they go. $34 million for Blake Griffin owed, $9.5 million for the tackle box John Lewis, $7.3 million for Langston Galloway. Both of those are expiring deals. So they do have an okay-looking cap sheet after that, with Jackson, Lure, and Galloway coming off the books this season. But it's still not an ideal situation in terms of them being active in free agency. It's going to have to come via trades for some sort of improvement to occur with this Detroit Pistons team. Not much else to really talk about with their off-season stuff. It is a pretty tepid situation. Ish Smith being really the big decider there with this squad. Just a quick mention of the guys who are helping to support this show today, Hotels.com. So today's show is brought to you in part by Hotels.com. So don't hate like your friend's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com and get rewarded basically everywhere. Hotels.com. Be there, do that, and get rewarded. All right, let's have a look at these players now on the Detroit Pistons. Their number one fantasy player for the season was Andre Drummond. Still hasn't turned 26, the big penguin. 79 games, 33.5 minutes, 17 points and 15.6 rebounds. Now, what we saw this season was what we saw at the end of last season, where his assists dropped off dramatically playing alongside Blake Griffin. That was pretty obvious. It happened to even a larger degree than I expected. 1.4 assists this season. Last year, he was at 3 assists per game, but under 2 per game when Griffin arrived. So he went back basically to the similar numbers that he had during his time with Griffin there. He did improve over the final stretch of the season. Some of that time Griffin missed, but he averaged over the final 15 games 2.4 assists. But I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that Griffin missed games down the stretch, enabling Drummond to get those numbers back. But the reason he has the value, and the reason he is the number 18th ranked fantasy player, is 1.7 steals and 1.8 blocks. Now, his free throw numbers regressed. He wasn't as bad of a free throw shooter as he'd been in the past, where he had 3 consecutive sub 40% free throw shootings. Last year, he got to 61. This year, back down to 58. But still, a negative 2.86 in terms of Z score in that category. That's relatively hard to recover from on 5 attempts per game. So I think we still should be looking at Drummond as a punt free throw guy, despite the significant strides he's taken in that area. Field goal percentage, 53%. You still want that to be better. He still takes some inopportune shots. Before Stan Van Gundy arrived in Detroit, this was a 60% field goal guy. If he was a 60% field goal guy, he could very easily be a top 12 sort of a player with massive boosts with steals, blocks, rebounds, and field goal percentage. But now that sort of just hovers below, keeping him in that second round range. If your league counts offensive rebounds, and he probably is almost a fringe first round guy with that value he provides. But it is really specific about how you want to build your team. Plus 4.65 PIPM, by far the best on this team. Wins added was absolutely massive. 11.9 really was key in that advanced metric. Plus 10.4 on-off helps that his backup was absolute garbage for most of the season. But realistically, a strong season from Drummond. Still has a lot of work to do. But there is room for improvement here with Drummond. That field goal percentage could, theoretically, if he took smarter shots, rise. I'm a little bit losing hope that that's the case. He kept threatening he was going to shoot threes. Well, he did shoot threes. He just didn't hit them. 13%. That needs to be better. But that's, I guess, an extra thing that could develop into his game. But if he starts taking too many of those, does that field goal percentage hit become more dramatic? And then you have that concern there. But I think overall we should be looking at Drummo as a second to third round guy with the idea in your head that you are going to be punting free throw percentage. Most likely it's not as egregiously bad as it has been in the past. Let's talk Blakey Griffin, who played 35 minutes a game. He has just turned 30 years of age, Griffo. 75 games, a guy that we talk about, or people talk about never drafting him. He's injury prone, and he still did get hurt towards the end of the season with that knee, which was obviously a real bother for him. But this was the most games he's played since the 13-14 NBA season. 75 regular season games from Griffin. He'll take that, especially where you're able to draft him. 24.5 points with 7.5 boards, over 2 threes, 2.5 threes in fact, almost 5.5 assists. But of course, he always lacks in those defensive numbers. 0.7 steals and 0.4 blocks on 46, 75, and 36% shooting. 58% true shooting. Probably the best season of Blake Griffin's career. Maybe not from a fantasy point of view. The 13-14 season, he was the 16th ranked guy there when he averaged 24 points a game. Again, this was his highest scoring season of his career, but what we've seen over the course of his career is the rebound numbers start to drop off and the efficiency numbers start to drop off, and that's relatively consistent now, but he is taking more threes and did it at a high level. He was fantastic for this team, but the difference between, say, him and Drummond for fantasy is that those defensive numbers, like Drummond's getting 1.7 steals, Griffin gets 0.7, 1.8 blocks, 0.4. That is such a huge difference, and that's the discrepancy between them in their value. Griffin was second in this team in PIPM and in wins added. Defensively graded out negatively in that metric, which is not a surprise for the guy that Griffin is. Plus 3.2 on off. So the advanced numbers don't love him as much as, say, the eye test did for how impactful he was. He was really, really good for this team and was a fantastic value pick, I think, in a lot of fantasy drafts. Yahoo had him ranked as 63rd heading into the season, and finished the year as the 37th ranked player. So that's a significant value play to get a guy like Griffin in that situation. So it was good to see him playing as well as he was back in the All-Star game, passing, distributing, running the offense. There's a lot of great stuff from Griffin, but those defensive liabilities, they do end up holding him back, and the lack of, and the low field goal, low free throw percentage combination holds him back from being an absolute elite top 25 sort of fantasy guy, unfortunately. Also, just some terrible mid-range shooting from him as well. 28% on his long twos is not good enough. 19 out of 69.
Giggity!
According to Cleaning the Glass. Let's look at the next guy. After this, it gets a little bit dark in terms of fantasy value. Reggie Jackson, the 135th ranked player. He's 29 years of age. Another guy, injury prone, but played all 82 games for this squad. 28 minutes a night, 15 points, 2 threes, 2.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.1 blocks, 42, 86, and 37% from three. And the part of the reason that Jackson's never going to be a good fantasy player is this. He doesn't rebound the ball. He gets no steals. He gets no blocks. He has poor field goal percentage. And with Griffin around, his assists really tumbled. And that's what kept him out from being that top 100 guy. You flashback to his second season in Detroit where he was the 64th ranked player, averaging 19, 3, and 6. Well, this season he's at 15, 2.7 and 4, so that 2 assists per game drop. The steals are piss poor, but they've always been piss poor. The rebounds are low, they've always been low, but dropping 2 assists per game is a massive drop off. He's also improved his 3-pointers in that time, went from 1.5 triples to 2.1, but overall the reduction in usage because of the arrival of Griffin, the reduction in assists because of the arrival in Griffin really has torpedoed his value as a fantasy player. And as I said, he's 29 years of age now. He's probably going to come into the season as a starting point guard again, but I don't think he should be really, because when we look at guys who we're drafting in that 130 to 150 range, I want guys who have the potential to push up into the top 80, top 70. I don't think Jackson's got that. He can be solid. You can stream him in. You can add him. Hey, I just need a solid point guard. But when you're drafting in that area, I just don't see that. And once this contract's over for Reggie, who is signing him to become a starter? The answer to that question is absolutely nobody. So his value is going to absolutely just disappear after this year. He did manage a positive PIPM 0.08, so marginally there. Second on the team in wins added. Defensively, he still struggles, but not massive, negative 0.77. On-off as a plus 2.6 is a solid number as well. And we just also saw him in some dual point guard lineups with Ish Smith as well, which worked decently, I think, this season. So Jackson wasn't a complete disaster this year, but the long-term outlook, maybe this season, I don't think he's going to be a top 100. I think he's ever going to be a top 100 guy again. And after this year coming, the 1920 season, I think a massive drop-off is going to be coming for Reggie Jackson. It was a weird season for the Duke, Wayne Ellington, coming across from Miami where he was out of the rotation and then traded to Phoenix, waived, signed with Detroit, became their starter. He's 31 and a half years of age, only 25 minutes a game, but of course he hits threes and he did that again. 2.6 triples on 37%, 10 points, but nothing else. 1.5 assists, 2 rebounds, a steal, 40 and 80 as his overall percentages. He is perfect as that stream sort of guy, but he's got to find a role where he's at least getting 20 minutes a night and has the ability to bang in 6 or 7 3-point attempts per game, and that's exactly what happened in Detroit. He was a positive when he was there, a plus 0.73 with his PIPM. Yeah, huge on-off of plus 5.9. He makes good things happen because he takes 80% of his shots from deep and he's going to hit them and he's not going to be afraid to do that. But he's not a player that you can rely upon all the time to be a consistent option for teams. He needs to get those minutes. Now, next season, when they bring back this team of Reggie Jackson, they bring it back and there's Blake Griffin, there's Andre Drummond. You've got the 2 and the 3 position available. Is Ellington one of those guys who locks in there? Will the Shark, Bruce Brown, step in? Will the Duck, Luke Kennard, take those spots? Ideally, that's what you'd want to happen for those guys to step into those positions. So Ellington's playing time could dip, but towards the end of the season when Griffin was out, we saw him spike 30 minutes a night and some big shooting nights. A 25-point game with 7 triples, a 26-point game with 4 triples, a 24-point game with 5 triples. In the playoffs, his minutes were up as well. Wasn't all that successful there, but still bangs in threes. And he's not a standard league type of a guy who probably has 1-2 more seasons left as a 2+ 3-pointer per game guy. I don't think he's going to be playing 30 minutes a night next season. He could. I don't think he will or he should, but there's still that possibility. But overall, he just doesn't provide enough in enough areas to be a consistent enough fantasy guy. Just a reminder, today's show is also brought to you by UnTuckit and Grip 6 belts. UnTuckit, great place to go for those shirts that look best untucked. So when you see someone walking around, whether you're buying a present for your dad, for your grandpa, your brother, whatever, and they're wearing a shirt that just doesn't look right, doesn't look fully put together, UnTuckit's the place to go. Get a shirt that's specifically designed to be worn untucked. Go to untuckit.com and use the promo code NBA to get 20% off, or go to Grip 6 belt. Nobody can do without a good belt, and Grip 6 is fantastic. It's the only belt with no holes, no flap, or no bulk, Grip 6 can give you a special offer as well at grip6.com/lock, LOCKE. That's grip6 with the number 6.com/LOCKE. It's a great gift for everyone in your life, males, females, children. They have options to suit everybody. I love my Grip 6 belts, so go and check them out. All right. The next player we're going to take a look at is the aforementioned Duck, Luke Kennard, about to turn 23, only 63 games and 23 minutes. I thought that was one of the biggest failures of Dwayne Casey's coaching, the inability to empower Kennard and give him that role and put him outside with Griffin to be a solid shooter. 40% shooter as a rookie, 39% shooter this year. We know that he can shoot. That's easy. 9.7 points with 1.7 threes, 3 boards and 2 assists with half a steal, 44 and 84 with a true shooting of 56%. It was an improvement over his rookie season, no doubt about that. But overall, his 2-point shooting, it did drop off. So that's not true. It improved marginally. His 3-point shooting is what overall dropped. He's still got a way to go. I still think that we can see more of him with the ball in his hands. Hard when you're playing with Jackson and with Griffin to be that third option, but he could be that guy. I think would be a perfect sort of second ball handler alongside a Griffin and a defensive-minded point guard as well, which Reggie Jackson isn't. He can distribute from the wing, not a strong rebounder, but he can be a 3.5, 4 assists per game guy. The steals is the concern. Will he ever get to 1 steal per game? That's probably always going to hold him back. And I was hoping for some bigger steps forward for Kennard this season, but it wasn't to be. The advanced stuff didn't love him. He had his struggles defensively, negative 1.3 PIPM, but he still was a positive on the court, plus 1.1. So it helps to the fact that the guys behind him, like Stanley Johnson, no longer on the team, were shithouse. The little dog, Glenn Robinson, was shithouse. So that helped his numbers. But playing guys like Langston Galloway ahead of Luke Kennard, I thought was really not great for the current team, but also horrible for the future development of this squad. And I didn't really like that decision from Casey, but I do think we're going to see more Kennard next season. He took his minutes per game from 20 to 23 this season. We need to see more of that. He started two of the games 2 and games 3 against the Bucks. I thought he put in pretty strong efforts towards the end of the season. You look at his game log at the end of the year, the end of the regular season through to the 4 games in the playoffs, 29 minutes, 15 points, 25 minutes, 27 points with 4 triples, 28 minutes for 21 points with 4 threes, 35 minutes, 19 and 4, 38 minutes, 9, 7 and 2, and then the last game against the Bucks, 33 minutes, 11 with 2 steals and a block. I think comes in as a starter and comes in as a 30-minute-a-game player next season, and he is the sort of guy, ahead of someone like Reggie Jackson, that I would take that flyer on in a last round with that upside to get better. In his 3rd season, with so many players do look to improve, I think Kennard is one of those guys that I'm looking to take that big step forward next season. Ish Smith, the next ranked guy, he was, I didn't mention that, Kennard 239th this season, Smith 259th. He is about to turn 31, 22 games, got that injury during the season, the groin injury, which limited him to 56 games, 9 points with 3.5 assists and half a steal, 42 and 76, including 33% from 3. We know he can't shoot. 48% true shooting is troublesome, but when he was out there and putting in minutes, we were able to use him as an assist stream sort of guy. We saw his minutes push up as he shared the court with Reggie Jackson at times, and the Pistons will want to bring him back because, as I said, they have no real ability to improve that backup point guard position. Even if it's 1 year, $15 million, I think they pretty much have to do that for Ish to bring him back and give him another 22 to 24 minutes a night, making him a solid enough, say, 16-team league player and maybe a 14-team league guy with those assists numbers. He was a strong on-off guy as well, plus 4.1, really good, considering the guys like Kennard and Jackson were also pluses, so he was able to make his hay while the sun shined. Negative 0.7 PIPM, yes, not great, but not terrible. Solid enough there from Ish. I thought he was good enough during the season, although, of course, the shooting is the big concern with him, that he just cannot hit shots, and he needs to get better there. Defensively, I thought he took a little bit of a step back from where he'd been in the past. He'd been a better defender than what he was this season. It wasn't great for him, but again, I still think he comes back in a relatively similar role this season than what we saw him play in this one. The 305th ranked player for the year, Langston Galloway, 80 games, 22 minutes. Both of those numbers are way too high. I just don't know what this guy does that's good at all. 8.4 points for Galloway, 1.7 triples, only 1 assist, 2 boards, half a steal, shot 39% from the field, 84% from the line, 45% on his 2s, 35% on his 3s. Nothing about what he did. And the thing is, all right, his shooting and this really poor field goal percentage was was bumped up by the fact that he shot 51% on his long-range twos, a number which is impossible to stick. So if that goes back to basic numbers, then he is an absolutely shitful shooter, even though he already is. 52% with the rim is horrible finishing. 35% from three is not great. The fact that he hit these mid-ranges at an unsustainable rate means that he's going to get worse, I believe. He doesn't do much in terms of being able to generate steals or blocks defensively. I just don't understand the appeal of him. Defensively, he's a sieve. He was a negative 1.31 PIPM. I didn't see the use there. 1.4 with his on-off. So at least he was a positive there. So maybe that's what Casey's hanging his hat on. But I just don't see it with him. When you've got guys like Brown, hey, throw Khyri Thomas out there for a bit. Get more minutes into Kennard. 23 minutes of Kennard versus 22 of Galloway, when it should be a 30-18 split, is irresponsible coaching to me from Dwayne Casey. Galloway's got one more season left. He won't be in this role after this season. May not even be in this role this season, but it appears that Dwayne really does like him. For what reason, I've got absolutely no idea, and he is clearly not a good fantasy player. The next guy we look at came across in a trade. Thon Maker, formerly of the Milwaukee Bucks, ended up playing 64 games at the age of 22. 15 minutes a game, 5 points with 3 boards, 0.8 blocks with 0.8 threes. That's his value. He's a threes and blocks guy. But the shooting was horrible. A true shooting of 53%, 41 from the field, including 32% from three. Really hasn't taken any sorts of steps forward that we wanted. Defensively, he still is a solid enough player there. 0.81 defensive PIPM overall, and negative there because his offense was just so poor. Negative 1.5 overall on-off as a member of the Pistons. He did some okay things starting some games when Griffin was out, had his moments, but reliability and consistency is what really lets Maker down long-term, and I just don't know where we go here with him. Now, of course, Griffin and Drummond are back, and he's ahead of like John Lua, the tackle box, Zaza Pachulia. He's ahead of all these guys, but he's far from locked in as a guy that's going to be getting consistent playing time. As a member of this Pistons team, he is a guy who really struggled with his shot a lot of this season. He blocks shots. That's really all he does. He can hit some threes, but realistically, I just don't see it for Thon long-term developing into a solid enough player where you're going to be getting anywhere close to probably even top 200 numbers at this point for Maker in his career. There's just too many discrepancies. Doesn't pass well. Rebounding is not great for his size. The shootings are concerned. Doesn't hit free throws. Defensively, he's good, but there's just not enough happening there for Thon for me to really get excited about. Let's talk about the next guy, the Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark, started a lot more games than I anticipated that he would. As a rookie, a second-round rookie nonetheless, played 74 games at the age of 22, and he started, where's my number there on the starts, 56 of them at that shooting guard position, realistically just to provide defense. 4 points in 20 minutes, 2.5 boards with an assist, half a steal, half a block, 40, 75, and a pitiful, that's the right word, 26% from three for a true shooting of 47%. I expect there to be significant improvements in Brown's shooting next season, but he's never going to be a high usage guy, 11% usage on the season, but what he does defensively is massively strong. Now, overall, PIPM is a negative 0.79. Now, for reference, that was better than Galloway, it was better than the Duck Luke Kennard, it was better than Reggie Bullock when he was on the team, Stan Johnson, Zaza Pachulia, Calderon, Maker, Robinson, the tackle box, Khyri Thomas. Better than all those guys, right? But it's so split. Offensively, a negative 2.36, one of the worst offensive players on the team. Defensively, the second best defensive plus player impact plus minus D PIPM at plus 1.57 behind only Andre Drummond. So he's got a real role there and really played strong defense as a rookie. Massive shot blocker as a guard, 92nd percentile for shots blocked as a wing guard. Steal rate needs to improve, but still solid enough stuff there. And you get those numbers in like Nerlens Noel style and get blocks, or Joshie Richardson, blocks and steals at a high level, and then start bringing in maybe 12 points per game and you shoot at 44% instead of 36%. You hit 2 threes a game. There is an avenue for Brown to make a significant rise up in the ranks. 342nd this season, but again, I think we're going to get Jackson, Brown, Kennard as the 1, 2, 3 on this squad. The 20 minutes from the Shark could easily push to 27, and then you start getting 1.2 steals, 1.1 blocks, which as a guard is fantastic. Can he ever be a 4 assists per game guy? Probably not, but can he get 2, 3 assists? I think that's possible. There is still a lot of development in Brown, so I love what we saw from him. He was a guy I liked quite a bit Coming into the season, I had him ranked significantly higher than what he was actually drafted in terms of Dynasty rookie ranks. I think I had him 22nd or 23rd, and he even outplayed my expectations. It's just going to require that shooting and the offensive part of his game to come around to then justify him playing more minutes and getting those other numbers up. Zaza Pachulia at age 35, it was serviceable, 13 minutes a game, 4 and 4 with half a steal, 0.3 blocks, 44 and 78. I don't know whether he's going to be back with this team this season, an unrestricted free agent on a minimum salary. They don't really have any other center options on this squad, so they could look to bring him back unless they're going to go with McCare exclusively as that backup center. But Zaza, he's maybe one season left in him, 2 seasons. That's about it. The tackle box, just terrible from him. 414th for the season, ranked for John Lua. 30 years of age now, 10 minutes, 4 points. He did shoot 58% from the field and 8% from 3, so there's obviously some weird things happening there with his shooting. I just don't think that he is a quality NBA player. Struggled a lot offensively. The advanced stuff, really hated what Lua was able to do this season. Negative 12.2 on off is obviously really, really poor. But yeah, he's shown flashes in the past, but that to me has always been on the back of unsustainable shooting, and we've seen this year that how much he does struggle, and again, he's way past his peak and prime. I don't think he's really much to look at. Jose Calderon at age 38, fine, but there are much better guys you should be looking at as your third point guard now. I reckon it might be it for him. The other guys on this roster, the little dog Glenn Robinson, they will almost assuredly decline his team option because he's stuck. And then there's a couple of players who we do need to talk about. A couple of second rounders with a bit of upside. Khyri Thomas and Svi Mykhailiuk. Mykhailiuk came across after that trade for Reggie Bullock and then didn't play. Literally played 33 games and 20 minutes as a member of this team, which is really surprising that they just couldn't get him out there as a guy that came in with his hype as a shooter. Shot just 33% from 3 after a hot summer league, and then really disappointed after that. I was impressed the fact that he averaged 1 assist per game in 10 minutes. That's solid enough, but the shooting just wasn't there. Defensively, he needs to be significantly better than what he was. And the guys ahead of him, obviously Kennard, Brown, Galloway, Allington, all these guys are currently ahead of where he is in the pecking order. I still have some hope for him to be better, and I think the shooting will get sit, much like Doug McDermott sucked as a three-point shooter in his first season in the NBA, and there are other examples, I just can't think of them off the top of my head. I think Svi will see a big jump up in that, but it's these other numbers, steals, blocks, rebounds, assists. Will he ever be able to contribute enough, maybe assist in those areas to be useful as a fantasy option and get enough minutes? I'm not that certain about that. Khyri Thomas, also another guy who struggled significantly with his shooting. 32% from the field, 29% from 3, 64% from the line. Nothing great from Thomas. He didn't play huge amounts. He at least played 195 minutes. PIPM was a negative, not surprisingly. Offensively, he struggled, but I thought he held up pretty well defensively. That's a good sign for a guard to be able to at least be a positive on that end as a rookie. So that gives him a little bit, but again, he's behind his fellow second-round pick, the Shark, in terms of development of those guys. He's not a young player, 23 years of age, so a bit older than Brown and a year older than Mykhailiuk as well, and older than Kennard also, who was in his second season versus Thomas's first. Thomas, the 482nd ranked player for this season. I'm not holding out massive amounts of hope for either him or Mykhailiuk on this team. They also had Kalin Lucas, who played 1 game for the season. He's a 30-year-old point guard who I don't imagine is going to be back on this squad. That'll wrap it up for the Detroit Pistons season review show. Don't forget to help out or check out our sponsors, hotels.com, UnTuckit and Grip 6 Belts. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball and the network at Locked On NBA Net on Twitter and on Instagram. Subscribe, 5 stars, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on Spotify and on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave a comment. You guys all know the drill. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Langston Galloway.